Hello, everybody, and welcome to Megashift today. I'm your host, Rob Kleiman, editor of Megashift. I'm joined here today with a good friend of mine, Ben Millstein, who's the founder of Prolog NYC. How are you doing today, Ben?
What's up, Rob? Good to be with you.
Nice to
Thanks for
be
having
with
me.
you as well. My pleasure. We've been longtime friends here in New York in the creative community. I think we met back in around 2013 when you were doing some creative community work with a group called NASMO. Uh, that's right?
That's right. Yeah, I remember you seemingly just walked into my life from Eventbrite, and we've been friends ever since.
Yes, the power of technology and community and platforms, and it's a topic we love talking about. So yeah, I've known each other about over 10 years, and you worked on a couple of different creative projects. Right now, you're the founder of Prolog. So the viewers will learn all about what you've been up to. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What you're up to now, and a little bit about Prolog.
Yeah, so thanks, Rob, for having me, first of all. And yeah, great to be on Mega Shift. Watched a lot of these, first time caller, long time listener. Yeah, I'm a writer, designer, and I currently serve as marketing director at an exhibition design company called Local Projects for almost a decade now. And as I kind of grew up in this incredible design studio and a few other jobs where I worked on creative teams, I really got to the privilege of seeing different disciplines working together. And I really think as more and more people head into product design or get the chance to use their creative muscles in the workplace, it's one of the most satisfying types of interactions you can have at work is to really be in the ideal creative team. At the same time, creative work, I think, is very different from your normal 9 to 5 in a few important ways. Firstly, you are usually in an ambiguous situation if you are doing creative work. That means you don't have as much data to lean on, you don't have as much prior experience. Maybe you're trying something you haven't tried before. And this really engages our defensiveness, right? Because we're just going on gut instinct a lot of that time. And so I got really interested in why some creative professionals who've been working together for 20 years still got highly emotional when creating things. I think part of it's the ambiguity. A big part of it also, when you're making things, you fall in love with the thing you're making. You get very emotionally attached in a way that isn't normal in like a sales job or if you're just working as a technician. Really engaging in multidisciplinary creativity is a different beast. Um, and especially at our studio, where we have people who have master's degrees in graphic design, software engineers, architects. I really saw how different the language was across all of these disciplines on purpose, uh, such that there was no kind of common language for creativity. And in some ways, that's good. I think creative has developed this kind of specific creative language so that we're taken seriously in a world that's always trying to cram us into objective ways of measurement. Having our own creative language is a way to build authority, but it can be less productive for finding common ground, for creating common goals. And so that's why about 5 years ago, I really started getting interested in a working definition of creativity
Hmm.
that could serve different people across different disciplines, especially people working in product design, especially people working in on a creative project for the first time. And so that's how we developed Prolog, which is built to increase both your creative capacity as individuals, as teams, and hopefully as an organization.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. And yeah, thinking about that interdisciplinary nature of working at a design studio or creative enterprise, and different practitioners, bringing their skills to bear against creative brief, and kind of everybody showing up with different expertise, and kind of developing a shared language to engage, and as you said, like having those common definitions. So I definitely want to learn a bit more about the definitions and the archetypes. But before we hop into that, so the name Prolog, is there a story behind the name, or kind of any inspiration for that?
I'd say if we had a cheesy tagline on our website, which we don't, it would say something like a prologue to your creativity. Look, uh, what I love about Prolog is its actual definition. We dropped the UE, but the definition of a prologue is before a novel has started, before a story has started, a prologue gives you kind of the mood and the feel of what the experience of the story is going to be like. And that is what I think creative teams are generally missing when they come to the table to try to make new things, is a sense of what that experience is going to be like, what it's going to be like to work with other people, where you'll have tensions, or you'll build alliances, and getting a feel for that in advance is, I think, some of the most effective onboarding that you can have as a creative team. So we really built our Prolog program around
Awesome, awesome, thanks. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the measurement piece of it. And so, uh, in a nutshell, how does Prolog go about approaching creativity, and what's some of the ways that that common language between professionals and creatives is being shaped over at Prolog?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely want to answer that within the context of just thinking about definitions, especially around
Hmm.
subjective concepts, right? Um, I have a friend who is doing a lot of research into AI, and was complaining to me that we're wringing our hands so much about artificial intelligence, but at the same time, we don't even have a really common working definition of what human intelligence is, most of us, that we could recall off the top of our head. And I think that's so true of a lot of large positive concepts that we would consider buzzwords. You were talking
Hmm.
about strategic briefs at design agencies, and one thing that's called for a lot of the time is innovation, right? And people will say, "Hey, we want to make a product that's innovative." What's innovative to different people, right? It depends. And I think a lot of the time buzzwords exist because people want to find common ground without actually having to get into some of that tension, right? When you start a brief process, you're trying to get stakeholders to actually align and not work out all the kinks of all the different definitions right away. But that can build in some inherent flaws into your process because you're actually aimed 20 degrees to the left or right of somebody else's definition of a goal, right? And I think this is really true when it comes to creativity, which is kind of the backbone of what innovation is. And innovation is an end goal, right? A product can be innovative, but a process is creative fundamentally. And so when we talk about creativity being important, um, and when we talk about creative products being important, it's important to have a shared definition of what that is. And so our working definition of creativity divvies up creativity into 5 component parts. We define it as the process by which you make products or services that are novel, effective, beautiful, connected, and complete. These types of definitions were built out of a model called the Creative Product Semantic Scale, made by doctors Susan Bessemer and Kieran O'Quinn in the late 80s. But it was an academic model, a rubric for creative products that any expert could use to judge a creative product or service. Um, and it was the model that had the most reliability between two different people. If you and I were to look at the same piece of Greek pottery using this creative product semantic scale, you have higher levels of correlation of reliability between the two of our evaluations, right? So fast forward 20 years later, I was working in this exhibition design studio, and what we do a lot of is interactives inside of museum galleries. So people are making stuff. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting if you could tie a creativity model to the back of, say, our urban planning exhibition where people make their own city block and find the one kid who makes the most genius, divergent type of city block. Um, and I was really surprised to find that not a lot of a surprising lack of really reliable, valid research had been done around creativity rubrics. A lot of research has been done around creativity studies, but it turns out that it's really hard to quantify objectively all of human creativity. And I think academics are just like everybody else. They want to be able to publish. They want to be able to prove their theories out. They want to be awarded grants. And I think creativity can be frustrating in that way. And I thought, well, maybe this is a job for somebody with an undergrad degree in film. Maybe embracing that inherent subjectivity and being transparent about it isn't going to make an objective measurement that people can, hire and fire based off of, but can give a common language to creativity, can give insights to individuals on how they perform, where their strengths lie, their individual perspectives, and ways they can improve. So now to answer your question, how do we actually measure creativity? So we've developed our own creativity assessment that maps to these 5 categories of creativity. People take 10 different activities that are super open-ended and fun that map to each of these creative strengths. And we've hired a really wonderful group of PhD level behavioral scientists, usually pursuing psychology or psychiatry or behavioral science degrees, to act as assessors using our numeric scale, our rubric, to give some degree of quantitative evaluation, but also a lot of highly subjective insights. We're not claiming that uh, somebody's score on an individual assessment will last forever, that it won't change, that it is the end all be all of what somebody's creative potential. But I do think anchoring somebody's idea of their own creativity in a really easy to understand concept, it can be a great jumping off point for continuing to develop their strengths and weaknesses. So yeah, we've
That's
been
awesome.
running this assessment for about 2 years with a lot of happy customers. We've also built out some one-to-one coaching modules and group coaching, because especially in the workplace, as our business reaches a lot of teams, I know people are going to be assigned our training, right? Right
Hmm.
now, we've been kind of on a direct to consumer model where people who are really interested in this stuff jump in. Uh, we've really been honing this so that people can really see the value in the model for themselves as they move through the training. And so that's why we've really developed all of these component pieces working in concert together: the assessment, an evaluation document, one-to-one coaching, and group coaching, to get people to really start to understand and get value out of the framework we've developed.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, so I think it's something you mentioned around getting those expert PhDs, folks in your network and through the academic and creative industries coming to kind of help as assessors. I think that's interesting in its own right because you're working with these creative experts or academics to essentially help assess and score or provide insight into the folks actually taking the Prolog assessment. So tell me a little bit about that process. How do you level set among those type of interdisciplinary experts for the this might be a bit meta but for for the process by which you're evaluating folks, like how's that been for you to level set and basically practice what you preach in this context?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I'm not a behavioral scientist. I have an
Sure.
undergrad degree in comms and film, but I've
Hmm.
always been fascinated by it, and especially in a world that's becoming highly quantitative. I think embracing the subjectivity of our quantifiable model has been really interesting, and it's been interesting to talk to behavioral scientists to see how quickly they pick up on what we've developed, because unlike somebody who's maybe doing software engineering or chemical engineering, behavioral scientists really deal in people. And if you look at the field of behavior science, it's all over the place in terms of its results. I was struck by one study that measured, I think, 100 different ways for people to incentivize people to go to the gym. And after 3 months, guess how many of those 100 ways actually incentivize people to go to the gym? Take a
Was it
guess.
like 5%, 5 out of 100?
0 out of 100.
Oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it gets at the I was also talking to a behavioral scientist, a professor at Yale, who said, the best you can do most of the time is to nudge people to do something they already want to do.
Hmm.
It's really not going to cut it for the kind of global challenges we're facing, if it's whether it's climate change or social justice or just getting democracy to work.
Hmm.
You want people to work for the collective good, sometimes at their own inconvenience. How do you start to think about what that looks like? I think behavioral scientists spend a lot of time thinking about those kind of models. And because of that, they have this really wonderful way of completing our evaluations, in that it's both scientific and authoritative, rooted in their own authority, but also they talk more like everyday people than somebody who might be working on mathematical theorem, and
Hmm.
have a way of, I think, giving the individuals who receive our reports real confidence that, hey, this third objective party looked at my creativity and indeed saw very specific types of creativity. I am creative. I do have something that makes me special, and
Hmm.
real one-to-one human insights into what I'm like, what my perspective is, what my point of view is.
Hmm.
And so I think that's been really valuable to work with these behavioral scientists and see how they take to it like a fish in water.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm hearing like that the group of behavioral scientists kind of have a shared language because of the field they come from, and kind of
Yeah, that's right.
uh, you know doubling down on that, and trying to help encourage them to lean into their strengths there, uh, and they kind of already have that shared language to apply to the assessment.
Yeah, it's been really surprising and wonderful to encounter that.
So So tell me, so you mentioned, the folks who actually receive the findings after taking the assessment. What does that look like? And I just kind of repeat for those 5 dimensions for our audience here. So we got the five
Yeah,
dimensions, and what would somebody be looking at after doing the 10 different activities, and what's the is it a ranking? Is it a percentile? Like how does it kind
yeah.
of show up, and how does it feel actionable for the recipient who goes through your training?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, really importantly, the first thing that people see is a breakdown of their 5 creative strengths in a pie chart, right? So
Okay.
everyone's the default is 20% for each of our 5 categories,
Hmm.
and if somebody is incredibly strong in one category, they're not going to get more than 25% as their leading strength. There
Hmm.
are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, we don't want to give a grade because what we're doing is transparently subjective, and if you've seen movies like Persona, which is a documentary about personality tests, it's kind of over dramatized, but makes a good point. Uh, Personality tests that aren't valid or reliable are used inside modern day workplaces to hire, fire, and promote, just
Mm.
because HR, I think, in this modern day age is so overworked that they would love to find any quantifiable model to just kind of sort through the morass of candidates or employees they have to try to make sense in a quantifiable way. So we don't want to give people, especially these large organizations, numeric grades for people. We don't want to start ranking people. Um, Secondly, the reason we divvy things up into this pie chart is so that even if people score low on one of these lowest on one of these 5 categories in their test, it's not out of reach for them to continually improve any of these. They may find that they're more compelled to hone in on the area where they proved weakest on that one instance of the test, as opposed to their number one jumping off point. So I think divvying up those 5 categories into component parts is uh, a really key part of how we are transparent and how we're helpful. I won't get into every single one of our 5 creative strengths, but you
Hmm.
can see them on our website on prolognyc.com/about.
Nice,
Uh,
nice.
but yeah, happy to talk about some of the ways they interact with each other, or just give a couple examples as is helpful.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I think, yeah, it'd be great to kind of just like anchor it a little bit. I know you mentioned
Yeah,
ones like completeness, beauty. Um, uh, we have efficacy.
yeah.
The
Well,
Yeah,
I would be curious if you and I are both on novelty. I think novelty is
novelty.
the
Right,
kind of
right.
the blockbuster definition of creativity in the modern world. It's
Hmm.
whatever's new, surprising, original combinations. Whenever you're in the startup world, you hear the Uber for X, right? Uber for
Hmm.
fill in the
Of course.
blank. That's the film. That is the original combinations at work in the way that Silicon Valley thinks about creativity. Um, and I think it's also, beauty is obviously, when it comes to fine art, great works of art certainly have aesthetic dimensions and also really have a direct line to emotionality. So those, both beauty and novelty, I think, are how we generally think of creativity. My hope was to really expand its purview. And so we have these 3 other categories: efficacy, which is around problem solving, and kind of high level visionary thinking. I think some of the most overlooked people in organizations, especially tech, are product managers, program managers, who have a vision for what a product or service could be, and are the taskmasters, the visionaries, the strategists to get the team there. A lot of their language is Gantt charts and milestones and making sure people did their homework. It's not always the most glamorous type of creative work, and not everybody likes to be told what to do. But I think those folks really need to be at parity with the creative directors of the world, the novelty folks. And you see this in advertising, right? Since the 90s, this British idea of account planning has existed in advertising, so that strategists really do have the kind of the same seat at the table in an optimal scenario as creatives. And that's ended up working really well because those people are considering audiences. They're considering the message they want to deliver. They're considering the context. The final two are around connectivity, which also have to do with all types of social creativity, including cultural context, um, interaction design, and just the consummate networker. You know, the person who says, Ben, you have to meet Rob because you have XYZ interests in common, XYZ personality traits in common. I think that's definitely a type of creativity as well. And last but not least, this is the one that I would personally feel like I'm the least like, but the one that people have really identified as kind of a 1 and 0 personality trait is completion. Do you care if something is finished, and what makes something finished? Do you have a gut sense of something being finished or not? For me, like B plus A minus, good enough is good enough. Go ship it, go see what happens. But there's a lot of value, obviously, as we get into the realms of AI or climate change. We have faced a lot of high stakes scenarios. Making sure that you get the details right and that something doesn't break is becoming much more important. And so, what I'm interested in are the dynamics between these archetypes. For example, I think both efficacy, you know, the project manager on the team, and completion, who might be, I don't know, a software engineer or someone focused on a more granular problem, they might share some mannerisms, right? They might be a little neurotic, they might be highly linear, kind of like taskmasters, but that doesn't mean they care about the same thing. And I think people will lump these two types of archetype in with each other. But efficacy person's looking at a high level view, and it's their job to say, okay, pencils down, we got to ship this phase of whatever project we're working on. And a completion archetypes, it's their job to say, hey, you may miss details, something may be wrong with this, we have to double check our work, let's not move fast and break things. And so understanding that even though you may have the same personality traits, your goals are very different is something important to understand upfront before you hit a budget cut or a timeline shift, before you hit a bump in the road. That's a bad time to figure out personality differences. And then there's like an interesting aspect of power dynamic shifting. I think we have I read many years ago a study that says even though America is a democracy, we have one of the most hierarchical, authoritarian corporate cultures in the world. And so you see this a lot in startup land, where someone who's the novelty visionary who has a great idea in the shower doesn't let go of the company, and is ultimately, you know, when the VCs come in, displaced by a middle manager who can effectively operate the company, kicked out. It's usually not very glamorous the way that happens, right? And I think we don't really have a culture of shifting control of power. We have a very authoritarian way of looking at that. But a novelty person, I consider myself one of them, who has a great idea. I think I'd be thrilled to have somebody come in and finish the details for me every time, and to still, you know, basically shift my role and be working in service of my own idea, being you know, taking a back seat while you know, a production expert takes charge. I think there can be something wonderful about relinquishing control about in the realms that you're not strongest in.
Yeah, I think they all definitely could play nicely together, and all are each of them are very important at different phases of the creative development process. You know, I think yeah, I'd probably pretty squarely fall in that connectivity bucket. But, you know, hope to think I also have a little bit of an eye for aesthetics and the beauty side. But yeah, I could see, you know, at the early phases of solving a complex problem, that connectivity really is important. You know, can we use you know, buoys to harness the energy of the waves, and, you know, linking, you know, for example, the climate change, you know, linking disparate ideas or old case studies or old examples being used new context.
Exactly.
So yeah, connectivity definitely resonates with me. But gotta do the full slate of the intake and sit down and do all 10 exercises to really know the outcome there. So looking forward to doing that. So yeah, so tell me, so this is kind of for, so you mentioned 4 teams. So who's your kind of your target audience? What's the next wave of this look like? Who you looking to meet or talk to as you kind of roll this out and continue to build on it?
Yeah, we're really going to try to stick squarely in between 3 audiences, but
Sure.
2 I identify I think are pretty uncommon
Hmm.
in terms of approach. Where anybody who wants to take this should come
Sure.
take our assessment because we hire PhDs for a couple of hours. It's very individualized. It's not like a $25 automated one-off personality test. The assessment takes 90 minutes where you're actually demonstrating a level of creativity. You can do it on your own or with a team. Yeah, people are welcome to take that on our website. Um, and because we started there, we have kind of a direct to consumer, brand that I think a lot of corporate training you don't see as much of. You see people who's or companies rather who are selling directly to HR
Hmm.
and really not thinking about their end user. If somebody is assigned my training and they're really not interested in what we're doing and they don't see immediate value, they're not going to try as hard and we're going to be less effective. But I think, especially coming off the heels of the pandemic, I really got interested in just how fragile, our working team structures can be, and really interested in what I could do for teams working in creative scenarios in terms of, um, where we could be most useful. So, I think we are geared specifically towards teams of 4 to 6, working on a new product. They can be teams that have worked together previously or teams that have just been assembled. But this year we want to pilot this program with folks across a bunch of different industries. So this is my invitation to those companies to come try our program at cost. We're doing $200 a seat, which is basically what it costs us to put it all together. And we want to see how this thing works, how it breaks, how it can really reach the individual. The third audience that I think is really interesting is what we're seeing right now in this moment in the economy, where you have smaller core teams working with permalancers or freelancers, right? And a lot of those folks are subject matter experts. A lot of them are expensive. A lot of them want to work remotely and have a lot of variety to their work. How do you create a coherent working team out of that different level of involvement in the organization where you have full-time employees who may work together and these freelancers who may not have as much skin in the game? I think getting a sense of your individual creative points of view and strengths and tensions is a really good way to do that. So yeah, I think those are our 3 core audiences is anyone who finds us on the internet or on Instagram, specifically teams working together to make something new, probably that like 2 months or longer timeline. We're going to be together for a
Hmm.
while. And I'm really interested in these teams of full timers and permalancers that you're seeing starting to evolve.
That's awesome. Thanks. So just to play it back, we got teams, we got creative pod type folks. So we got full-time employees that are just all working together. We got people who are kind of more in a creative pod with the permalance. And then we have kind of HR professionals looking to do some more kind of corporate training, but care about the end user. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and individuals from
And
the internet.
individuals.
We want
Okay,
everybody to take it,
cool.
but yeah.
Well, you heard it here first, internet. Hop on Prolog. Cool. Well, so as we kind of come up on the half hour here, anything I haven't asked you about yet in regards to, this AI explosion or kind of the ethics of all of this and, collecting the data or, anything kind of as we look at the next 2024 that you think really is
Yeah,
changing the game.
it's a great question. I think um, AI and specifically semantic models coming out of ChatGPT, I've really been glad to see that AI writing has been the first thing to hit market because it really helps us think about the nature of talking to a machine and the nature of our own definitions. When you ask ChatGPT, for questions for interviews, it's going to spit back what it sees as like the most average responses. I find that fascinating. Like as individuals, we want to be as unique as possible. If we were to project a personality onto the machine, it just wants to be a real boy, right? It wants to find the most average uh, definition, average human response possible, and it reflects where our definitions of big concepts are the most ambiguous, right? If humanity writ large doesn't have a well-defined understanding of a concept, that's going to be reflected in the definition. And so I think when people are working with large language models and tweaking them, when they're setting these categories, when they're training a data set on a certain population, if you train a large language model on Reddit, you're going to get a very specific type of personality to those responses. So
That
I
is
think
true. I don't know if I want to meet
uh,
that computer.
so I think that AI is helping us to understand how to deal with ambiguity, how to try to make more precise definitions, how to work flexibly, and that's really what I've always been interested in with Prolog. Is being definitional doesn't mean turning people into a science or a series of one and zeros. It just means being a little more precise and embracing some of the tensions around how different people look at these concepts that we all hold near and dear. So I hope Prolog can help with that. I hope people working with machine learning find ways to connect with humans on a more deep level. Like that would be the ideal use of this kind of thing.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of good ways to bring teams together, bring people together, grounded in these 5 dimensions, and learning more about oneself through Prolog NYC and your awesome panel of experts you put together. So yeah, folks, try it out, and we'll see where it goes. We got exciting 2024 ahead, and want to thank Ben, of course, for his time and for spending the afternoon with us to learn more about Prolog. So yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be
All
on the other
right.
show.
All right. Take care,
Thanks for
everyone.
having
Have
me.
a good one. Thank you, sir. See you
See you out there,
soon.
folks.
Bye-bye. End stream.